right, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar presented by Harris Property and the Mandara Rise estate. Today, we're going to be talking about seizing the sea change and the Whitsunday's upcoming growth in 2024. My name is Aaron Best. I am the host for this evening. I am also the communications manager for Mandara Rise. For tonight's webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the questions panel in the GoToWebinar screen, and we will try and get to them as soon as possible. You will also find there are a couple of handouts available to you in regards to the Mandara Rise estate. If you're interested in downloading them, they are available in the handouts panel, and you can also send me any questions you may have over the chat. I'm also joined tonight by Luke Harris, who is the owner and developer of Mandara Rise, and he's also the managing director of Harris Property. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks, Aaron. Good to have you. Good to be on the call with you.
Thank you. So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about real estate and in particular the Australia and the state of the real estate market post-COVID. So we'll be talking obviously about interest rates, which has been a hot topic for the last particularly 12 months plus. We'll then also be drilling down, particularly down to Queensland and the Whitsundays and the impact that COVID and the lockdowns that the country experienced has had on those areas and the demand for real estate in those areas. We'll also be introducing you to Mandara Rise, a new estate in the Airlie Beach, Cannonvale area, and the potential opportunity for growth in that particular location. So starting off with Australia in the post-COVID era. So Luke, I know you and I talk about interest rates a lot in our office. We have seen, I think it was 12 consecutive interest rate rises before we've had a pause over the last few months. And most of the big four banks are now predicting that interest rates are hopefully going to stay steady at that 4.1% with cuts next year. What's been your take on interest rates over the last 12 months?
Well, look, I think interest rates have really scared a lot of people for the last 12 to 18 months. And, you know, I'm no different to any other investor out there that's had to cop the interest rate rises. And a lot of people have really struggled with those interest rate rises and have, I guess, to a certain extent, put off a lot of decisions to buy property. Whether it's their own place to live, whether it's a holiday home, or whether it's an investment property. But also during that time, a lot of people have decided to sell. So it has had a bit of an impact and a bit of a shake-up on property markets. But I think where we're looking forward for the next 12 months into 2024, we're really starting to see that inflation get under control and that rates are going to start coming back down again over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and I know we we keep an eye on the market, and every 3 months the Domain release their housing report, and the last 2 housing reports have shown that prices have started to pick back up again. So clearly buyer confidence is starting to come back into the market. And I think in the March quarter, Sydney was the only capital city to see growth, but in the July quarter, we saw the June quarter, sorry, we saw both Melbourne and Brisbane join them. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen over the next few months as people do start to buy property again.
Yeah, and I think, like you said there, a lot of the media publicity around, you know, the rates going up and prices crashing, it's all, you know, headlines in the media. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to eventuate, and it certainly didn't eventuate. 20% price drops have never happened in the history of Australian property. So, you know, all this doom and gloom that was spoken of over the last 12 months just hasn't eventuated really.
Yeah, definitely. As everyone on the call would be aware, COVID introduced to us a new different lifestyle where we had to get used to lockdowns. I'm from Melbourne and endured quite significant lockdowns. Luke, you were in Queensland for some of it and Melbourne for some of it.
Melbourne for most of it, and it was not a fun period of time. And you and I've been friends for a long time, and I know that we couldn't catch up and, you know, have a drink and do the things that we do. So yeah, it is a very bit of a distant memory now. With us Victorians have sort of put it behind us, but yeah, it was a very horrible period of time there for a while, and yeah, it's nice to sort of see the tail end of COVID, and really doesn't get anywhere near the attention that it got a couple of years ago, and it's becoming a bit of a distant memory.
Definitely, and from a real estate perspective, one of the interesting things for me has been the hangover of net migration out of Melbourne. Melbourne is starting to see its population grow again, but that's a lot to do with international migration and things like that. Whereas interstate, Melbourne saw quite a period, or Victoria saw quite a period of losing its population, and predominantly those people were picked up by Queensland. And you can see on the screen now, there were 31,000 new residents making Queensland their home in the year between June 2020 and June 2021. So COVID obviously pushed a lot of people to move out of Victoria because of how bad we were hit by it. One of the interesting things that I found from that was that there was a quote about it not being baby boomers that are flocking to Queensland for their retirement now, that there's a lot of millennials making their way there, particularly because of affordable housing. And they drew a lot of attention to the weather in Queensland being a reason that people wanted to move there. You, Luke, would know more about the weather up there.
Funny that, yeah, funny that. And look, I'm one of those people that sort of always, I mean, I grew up in WA where the sun's out 300 days of the year, and a lot of people in Victoria and the southern states, and that includes New South Wales, have got, and I'm not suggesting the entire population does, but a lot of people do have plans to move north and sort of go into that retirement phase of their life, or look for job opportunities in Queensland. And Queensland certainly is growing and has been growing for some time. And I think what I've seen, particularly over the last 5 years, is that affordability that Queensland's got that you're sort of not seeing anymore. Certainly not in New South Wales, and Victoria is becoming more and more expensive as well. So a lot of people had already, prior to COVID, planned to move to Queensland. But COVID really just brought forward a lot of people's plans, a lot of people that were already thinking about moving to Queensland or even to another state, but in particular Queensland for tonight's discussion, that people really have decided to bring forward those plans. Maybe they changed jobs, and especially people in Victoria that were locked down for so long really had to look at their situation, and some people, changed their entire job situation. Some people were forced to leave their jobs, and some people just made the choice to maybe review what their entire life direction was going, and reviewed their work situation. And working from home has been a huge thing, in the last couple of years, and it's sort of become a little bit more normal now for people to work from home.
Yeah, and as you touched on there, the affordability of Queensland is obviously something that is drawing a lot of people's attention, particularly when it comes to people who are first home buyers and those sorts of those people who are looking for something that's more affordable. You touched on Sydney and Melbourne, and the statistics show that 2022 Sydney was ranked second most expensive home buyer market, and the only city in the world that was more expensive than Sydney was Hong Kong. Melbourne ranked 5th, but Brisbane was only 78th. So it is a really appealing opportunity for people to get into the market at a more affordable rate. And we see a lot at the moment, people talking about the Brisbane 2032 Olympic Games also going to drive up the demand for people wanting to live in Queensland as well.
Yeah, I think the Olympics, Aaron, like a lot of people sort of talk about the Olympics being a massive driver for growth, thinking, well, because the Olympics are coming, Brisbane's going to go crazy. And a lot of people have sort of moved up there on the announcements of the Olympics. But the reality is that what it's really doing is it's actually just introducing more people to Brisbane. So it's appearing more on a global stage, and more people are attracted to Brisbane because the word Brisbane is getting thrown around the media a lot more. So it's attracting people to look at Brisbane, why Brisbane, and Queensland was chosen for the Olympics. And really that just highlights for a lot of people that Brisbane is actually a world city, and that Queensland is a destination to go to. So what it does is it just brings more attention to the city. It doesn't necessarily mean that Brisbane was a bad place or Queensland was a bad place prior to the Olympics, but it's just brought that extra attention to, I guess, expose Brisbane to more people, and that's really had an impact on prices. And we have seen really over the last 2 or 3 years, prices in Queensland have, seen steady growth, and really over the next 8 or 9 years or so, as we get closer to the Olympics, we're going to still see further growth throughout all of Queensland, not just in Brisbane, but through the regional markets that have been extremely popular too.
Yeah, and I guess that's I know, speaking to friends of mine that are that have come from overseas, and even people here in the office who are from overseas, the sheer size of areas of Australia do surprise them, and so when they hear Brisbane, they think that all of Queensland is really close to Brisbane. But obviously, we wanted to talk today about the Whitsundays, which, even though it is still Queensland, it is an area of Queensland that is further away from Brisbane and has its own benefits, and obviously is one of our most popular tourist destinations in the country because of the Great Barrier Reef and those sorts of things. So it'll be really interesting to see the impact of international attention on Brisbane and Queensland for the entire state, not just the capital city.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the Whitsundays and the area in general, over the last sort of 15 years or so, we've seen a significant jump in the amount of people that are interested in that area. And you can see on the screen at the moment, the amount of people that are moving in to the Airlie Beach and Whitsunday region far outpaces the amount of dwellings that are being approved by the Whitsunday Regional Council. So over the last 10 years or so, on average, they've only approved 166 new residential dwellings each year, but they've had almost 300 new, they've had almost 700 people moving into the state, moving into the area, which based on the average of 2.4 people per dwelling, that means that we needed about 300 new dwellings every year. So that shortfall of around 130 dwellings or 130 houses or properties is going to reflect quite strongly on the amount of demand that goes into that area, and it is a limited area as well.
Yeah, I think that, look, our research many years ago, when we first got involved in this particular area, and when I started buying property in the Airlie Beach and the Whitsunday region, it showed up on the map for me, I guess, through the due diligence I was doing, because when we look at Queensland from a state level, a lot of Queensland had a huge amount of growth, particularly the tourist areas of Queensland had a lot of growth through the 80s and 90s. And then people moved to the area, and it often sort of became, I guess, what people will call a one-trick pony, where it was basically just a tourism destination. There was nothing else. But the diversity in employment really has increased over the last couple of decades. And I guess what really happened was around, GFC time. Prior to the GFC, everything was $1 million, and in this particular local government area. And what happened after the GFC is a lot of people from South, Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne in particular, they actually sold their, they had margin calls on their stock portfolios. They sold their holiday homes, which they had in the Whitsunday region. And what that meant was that a lot of properties, in surrounding areas basically didn't grow for a period of time, because these holiday homes weren't used as that anymore. So what's happened since GFC, and it seems like a distant memory, really is that no new construction has happened, but the demand has stayed there. It has stayed steady. And like I said, the employment in the area has diversified from being a tourism area alone to, many industries, including mining, a huge amount of mining, but it's not reliant on mining. There's a lot of other industries in the area that people work in and around as well, and you can see some of them here on the screen. But there's a lot of activity happening in the area, but there still isn't the housing supply. The other thing to keep in mind is that leading up to COVID, the property market, like I said, the demand was still increasing, but the supply had basically dried up. When prices started to recover again, people that had bought property in 2008, prior to 2008, that had held on to it, they were waiting for the prices to recover again back to what they paid for it. So when prices started to recover again around 2020 and 2021, those people sold those properties. Now, at the same time, the local market's been impacted by people moving from south, other parts of Queensland included, as well as Sydney and Melbourne, moving into those investment properties, which has taken more rentals off the market, which is really a perfect storm that we're in now, where there's a really limited supply of new properties coming on the market, huge demand, and the vacancy rates are almost zero.
Yeah, and we can, as you mentioned, you can see on the screen at the moment, even just in the last few years, the amount of commercial and infrastructure spending that has gone into the region, particularly around Mackay, Bowen and Airlie Beach, has skyrocketed. When putting this presentation together, I tried to make the 2024 infrastructure spending proportionate to the others, but you couldn't actually see them on the screen. So $10 billion is quite a lot more than the $40 million that is being spent on residential development over the last few years. So it is an area that, as you said, offers a lot more than just a holiday destination now, and there are a lot of people there that will be moving into that area for work. Moving on specifically to our estate, so Mandara Rise. So we're a premium land estate just located outside of Airlie Beach town centre in the suburb of Cannonvale. Now, the Cannonvale and Airlie Beach area, Airlie Beach occupies around about a square kilometre of space that is sandwiched between the Great Barrier Reef National Park and the Conway National Park. So the two national parks will never be developed because they are in national parks. That's the whole point of them, which means that space is strictly limited. It's not a matter of when we develop all this space that's available in Airlie Beach and Cannonvale that the government will find and release more. Once this land is gone, that is it. The only land that will be released is further and further inland, further away from the beach, further away from the national park. So it's a really exclusive opportunity to potentially be able to get into that space. Cannonvale and Airlie Beach. Luke, did you want to cover off a little bit more about the area itself?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, when we're looking at whether we're buying for investments or whether we're buying to live in, obviously the scarcity factor is a really important thing. So if you look at the picture on the screen there, it's quite clear that we're very close to the beach, very close to the town centre. We've got parkland nearby, and we're bordered by national park. So from that perspective, these particular blocks of land are really landlocked between the national park, like you mentioned, Aaron, that there is only limited amount of land in these particular areas. And when we look at the comparable sales in the area, properties selling in the 800s, 900s and over $1 million, it really does allow people to sort of be a part of that new town centre, which is what Cannonvale is. So if you look at, I guess, the demographic in Airlie Beach town centre, really most locals don't actually live in Airlie Beach. Most locals live in Cannonvale or Jubilee Pocket. They're the two suburbs that sit to the left and to the right of Airlie Beach town centre. Most of Airlie Beach itself is hotels, Airbnbs, and commercial premises with shops and liquor stores and other bars and cafes and all the fun stuff that the town has to offer. But I mean, I used to come up here 20 years ago when I was quite a lot younger, and it was very much a backpacker town. They'd have cheap steak nights, and they'd have very much a backpacker feel. Now that still hasn't gone away because it is still the centre of the Whitsundays. You've got 74 islands out there, and you've got easy access from the Shute Harbour or the Airlie Beach terminal to get out onto the islands, and you've got the Whitsunday airport as well. But I guess many years ago it was probably not quite the same quality. I think it's matured a lot over the last 20 years, and what we've started to see is a lot of that money that's come from Sydney and Melbourne has come into the town. We're now starting to see some really high quality cafes and restaurants opening up. There's fine dining in Airlie Beach now, which you would never have predicted 10 or 20 years ago, probably even 5 years ago. You would never have guessed to have fine dining outlets. Airlie Beach as well has the highest proportion of super yachts in the country. So super yachts come here, and also the cruise ships all stop here as well. So that brings in money every time a cruise ship drops off 4,000 people. They come onto shore and they spend all of their money. So all of these different, I guess, income sources for the town have really impacted on employment opportunities and I guess a really high shortage of properties available. So when we're looking at this particular location, just to the left where it says Parkland there, we've actually got the major shopping centre less than a kilometre away. So really we are right smack in the middle of town. So it's an amazing lifestyle. And when we did the research on this many years ago, this came up on the radar. And since COVID has happened, we've seen a massive increase in interstate migration.
Yeah, and for those that are moving into the area, we've seen. So I was looking at the statistics here for whether people like living in Airlie Beach, and a whopping 92% of residents say they love the area, and 58% said that they would never live anywhere else. Of the people who do live in Airlie Beach, however, 85% of them were born somewhere else in Australia. So it's interesting to see that, like you said, there are a lot of people that move into the area and they clearly just want to stay once they are there. 60% of residents who stay 10 years or more once they move into the area. So it's obviously a popular place and somewhere that people do actually want to live. It's no longer just that tourism, that backpacker town. It's an opportunity for people to actually put down some roots as well. The Mandara Rise estate itself. So as Luke mentioned, we are very close to the beach. We are very close to the shopping centre, and I think it's 5 minutes or 7 minutes to the Airlie Beach town centre by car, Luke.
Depends on how fast you're driving, but 6 minutes usually. So somewhere in the middle there, 5 or 7. But yeah, usually takes me about 6 minutes to get into town. And generally that's where all the bars and cafes and restaurants are, like I said. But you've also got the lagoon down there, the massive public pool, which is free. And yeah, the boardwalk that goes around the edge, and it's just a really beautiful part of the world. And I moved here in 2021 after dealing with the COVID lockdowns that we talked about before. I've been here ever since, but that was after I purchased the land for this development, and we've already seen a huge amount of demand for this, and this is why we wanted to do this webinar tonight, because there's a lot of local residents that have been asking us for a bit more background on the development, why we started it and why we're doing it. But already we've seen that, you know, given the position that we're in, which is prime location in town, but also a lot of people coming from the southern states, and again, me included. When I grew up in Perth in the 80s, we lived on an 800 square metre block of land. That's just what we used to as kids. Now, in Sydney, Melbourne, and even Perth and Brisbane, and Adelaide to a certain extent, your average land size is about 310 square metres. And people are used to building houses now on 310, 350 square metre blocks. The smallest blocks that we've got available in Mandara Rise are 600 square metres. And to some Queenslanders, particularly in this area, 600 square metres seems small. So it's interesting to hear that feedback. But we've got 40 land blocks available, and yeah, the smallest is 600. So for us southern people, especially the Melburnians that are used to seeing land for sale for $400,000 or $500,000, and getting a 300 or 350 square metre block for that price, this will be a bit of a shock for you to see the estate here.
Yeah, I know. Coming from Melbourne, my first block of land that I purchased when I was 19 was 500 square meters, and I thought that was huge. But as I continued to work in the real estate sector of Melbourne, I've started to see smaller and smaller block sizes, and seeing people making interesting ways of utilizing that space with townhouses and things like that. So 600 is, as a minimum, is quite large.
You can do a lot with 600 square metres. I think the reason for people on the call to understand the reason why the land sizes have gotten smaller is because obviously costs to do a development have increased over the last few decades. There's more costs involved in giving councils infrastructure charges and things like that. But essentially what they've done, rather than keep all of the land sizes at 500 or 600 or 700 square meters, due to the cost of developing those blocks, rather than trying selling $600,000 or $700,000 pieces of land, what they've done over time is they've reduced the land size to keep the price affordable. Because as you can imagine, if they kept the land size the same as costs increase, first home buyers and others getting into the market wanting to build a house, wanting a 600 square meter block of land and paying $600,000 or $700,000 for it, it just doesn't make any financial sense. So to keep prices down, developers have had to reduce the land sizes, and councils are obviously getting smarter as well, knowing that people need to pay all of their council rates and pay, the state government has to put in hospitals and schools, and they've got to allocate land for shopping centres and things like that. So it makes sense as our population increases to have more density, so that there's more people living in a smaller area. So that's why you'll see a lot of our capital cities have had a huge influx in townhouse developments and apartments over the last couple of decades, because our cities can't just keep growing forever and a day. Even in Sydney and Melbourne now, there's suburbs 50, 60 kilometres from the CBD, and people commute. Whereas this sort of lifestyle here in the Whitsundays, everything's 5 minutes away. So it really is that laid-back lifestyle, and I've noticed it for the last 2.5 years or so that I've relaxed quite a lot more, and the lifestyle is it really is insane. And having that open space and that sunshine every day, and having a big backyard makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree. Coming from apartment living in Melbourne. As you mentioned earlier, we've done our own research on the area and made sure that what we are offering is going to be a worthwhile investment to people who are looking to buy into the estate. In particular, these two recent sales, one from 2022 and one from this year in 2023, both 4-bedroom houses. Literally, one of them is literally down the street from the estate. So that's the one on the left there that was sold this year for $1,025,000. It was originally purchased as vacant land in 2021 at $185,000. So you can see there that there's been a real uptick in the value of that property just in the last couple of years, and because a good quality house has been put on there.
And again, looking at these, Aaron, these are both 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom with double garage. These are not particularly fancy homes. They're not particularly high spec. Obviously, both of these homes do have a pool, which makes a big difference in North Queensland. But again, these prices that are over $1 million really show that there is strong demand here. Obviously, when the sales were made, there's been a bit of a gap between the land acquisition price. And this one on the left actually here is on a road called Able Road, which is actually, I guess, a busier road because it is a connecting road between Shute Harbour Road, and there's a lot more traffic on that road. So to get a $1 million sale on a busy road like that is quite amazing. But also looking at the position that Mandara Rise is in, we're in an elevated position where you capture those views, but also capture the afternoon breezes and really take advantage of the great weather. So yeah, it's good to have a look at obviously the end sale price. Not that we're suggesting people just buy a completed property and pay top dollar for it, but it depends really on what you build on your block as to the end value of it.
And in Mandara, we also have the opportunity for dual occupancy lots. So I think we've still got 2 available, Luke.
I believe so. Yep, there's dual occupancy. What that means is it's pre-approved by the council. So it's already gone through the planning stage to be able to build 2 lots on there. 2 dwellings on there. So looking at the designs on the screen here, this is an example of one of the dual occupancy lots that we've had designed by our very, very talented designer. And looking at these 2 townhouses here, if we look at the figures on the left-hand side, just for comparison, land value at $329,000, and that's an 800 square metre dual occupancy lot. Looking at roughly $500,000 per townhouse, and these are not small pokey townhouses. They're family size, decent size townhouses with a good backyard. That gives you an end cost of roughly 1.329. Obviously, there's a little bit of stamp duty on there on your land, which is about $10,000, but your estimated end value at roughly $850,000 per townhouse, gives you quite a big uplift. So any builders and developers looking to get their teeth stuck into a dual occupancy project, there's quite a big uplift there. And obviously we can send more information on those particular lots and the designs and everything that goes with it. But really that is something that people can get their teeth stuck into and, do the maths on that, take out all of your GST and your sales if you do plan on selling them. There's still quite a healthy profit in there. Obviously that's going to depend on your own financial situation, but certainly worth a look at. The rent on those would be roughly $850 per week, and that's quite a conservative figure. Similar sort of properties are renting for well over $1,000 a week, giving a rental yield of over 6.5%. So, when we're looking at the yields in this particular area with vacancy rates at basically zero, these will be in high demand. Aaron, did you want to make any comments on the reports you've got there? Or?
Yeah, so the numbers that you're seeing on your screen are numbers that we've put into our own property investment projection tool. So that we've done all the numbers for these, and the values that we've come back with are the ones that you see on your screen. So you can see there 24% annual ROI over the first 10 years, and an estimated equity gain of $1 million after 10 years. So we haven't just pulled numbers out of the air. We've gone through and we've looked at, okay, how much is stamp duty going to be? How much is it going to be to get a loan? How much are the repayments going to be? And we've run those values through our system to ensure that the information that we've got here for you at that 6.5% rental yield actually reflects what you could potentially get if you were to look at getting these to developing these style of townhouses on these blocks.
I think these are just rough numbers, obviously, but looking at those figures, it really does help to understand that. So if anyone's interested in looking at that in more detail, just pop a message into the chat or contact us after the webinar, and we can send you some more information on that to have a look at.
And for those that aren't looking at developing a dual occupancy lot or building townhouses, and we've seen with the 1 million plus single story homes that sold a few slides back, even if you were to build a good quality single story house in the estate, you're likely to still be doing really, really well once that house is on the ground as far as property value goes. So I think, Luke, you've been speaking with some developers in the area, some local builders in the area, and they're estimating around these sorts of prices on the screen here, 450 to 550 for single story homes in the estate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And we've actually got a local builder that loves the estate so much that he's actually bought his own block in the estate, and he's planning to build his family a home there. So obviously having a local builder in the estate is a good sign, but obviously these build prices. Obviously we are in a North Queensland, so it does cost a little bit more to build a house in this particular area because you've got to get everything. There's no steel or brick factories. They've got to come from Townsville, Mackay, or Brisbane, or other parts of the country. But at the end of the day, any money that you spend on your build, you're getting back in your end value. But of course, looking at the land prices, add the land price to your build price, look at the comparable sales in the area. Even if you were to sell it the day it's finished, there's still a profit in there for anybody that wants to look at doing that. Obviously, we don't recommend building and selling as a spec home, as they call it. Obviously, if you're looking to buy to live in, there's certainly equity in there. If you're looking to invest, there's a substantial rental return available. But I think the demand for housing in the Whitsundays is not going anywhere anytime fast. And like I said before, with the GFC caused a huge impact with a lot of people selling properties. But of course, now that's changed. There's a lot more, a lot more money that's come into the area, and there's a lot more stability with the housing market. And what we're seeing now really is that people are relocating. I actually spoke to a couple today that are selling a property at another part of Queensland to move here, and they're paying cash for the house. So there are people like that coming to this area to retire, and they've got money to spend. Those people also put money back into the economy, going out to restaurants and cafes and shops. So, looking at what's happening in the area, looking at the new approvals, there hasn't been a huge amount of new approvals come online with the local council. So after this estate, there isn't actually a huge amount more coming online. So buying and building into this particular area, which is really the centre of Airlie Beach now, it's been nicknamed the new centre of Airlie Beach, which is Canberra. There's new commercial developments. There's a new BCF going in. There's a new Super Jeep Auto. All of these big franchise companies, they've already got stores here, but they're building bigger ones. There's plans to expand the Bunnings. There's all sorts of money coming in from those types of firms, but also the state government's doubling the size of Shute Harbour Road. There's a huge Shute Harbour Marina development. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on that I guess until you start drilling into areas like Airlie Beach, you actually don't really know much about it. But when you're looking at this with a fine-tooth comb, you can see the activity in the area, and there's so many more people in town than there ever has been. And really, it's an area that I see massive potential in the years ahead.
Yeah, and so looking at what we do have available in the estate, so we are down to the last few lots in our first stage, stage B, which in the image on your screen at the moment is that darker colour at the top of the estate, and then we've still got a few lots still available down in stage 1C, which I believe, Luke, is due for titling next year.
Yeah, so the first stage in stage B that you can see there, that's probably titling in about 4 or 5 weeks. So really only a handful of lots left. There's people looking at these lots as we speak, but stage C will be titling probably January, February at this stage. So we're probably expecting settlements to occur February, March at the latest. So that is very soon as far as property is concerned. And really we are down to those final lots now. So we wanted to do this presentation for people that have been inquiring that just wanted to know a little bit more about the estate. There's well over 100 people that have registered for the call tonight so that they can actually see what's going on and the reasons behind it, and obviously our thinking behind the development. So anyone that's looking to invest or look for a holiday home or looking for something to buy for themselves to live in, then obviously, looking at all of the data behind it, it makes perfect sense. So we're really excited about what we've got coming to market.
Yeah, and like you said, Luke, the minimum lot size is 600 square meters, and you can see there at the top of that list, 600 square meters at lot 56 for 229,900. A really great opportunity for someone to purchase land, particularly if they don't have the borrowing capacity to buy something in places like Brisbane or Melbourne, and looking to invest, or as you said, people who are looking at moving into the area to live. It's a great opportunity to find a good block of land at a good price. For those who are interested in potentially reserving one of the lots that we have available in the estate, you can scan the QR code on your screen. There is more information available in the handout section of the webinar. So if you have a look in the handouts panel, you will see the estate price list, the master plan, which shows you the layouts of those blocks of land and the dimensions of each of the blocks of land as well. And there is also the expression of interest form, which you can also scan the QR code to reach. If you are interested in reserving a block of land, you just need to scan the QR code, fill out the form, and then someone from the estate will be in contact with you to confirm the details of which lot you're interested in, and determine whether or not we can accept your submission. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Luke?
Yeah, I think just the reservation process really is to go through and essentially reserve one of the lots. And like you said before, it will just reserve it and take it off the market. That doesn't mean you've bought it. And obviously we want to have a chat with you and make sure that you can afford it and your finances in place and things like that. always good to check those things before we issue contracts to anybody. But the reality is that titles are coming out soon. Fantastic growth opportunity for anybody to look to buy and hold property, and really exciting times ahead for this area. I'm really pleased that we've been involved with this for the last 6 years or so, and believe me, a lot of work has gone into delivering this project, dealing with councils and dealing with all of the surveyors and engineers and all of the fun stuff that happens behind the scenes. So getting to this stage of the project is really exciting. We've deliberately held back quite a few of our lots until we get closer to settlement, so they're now on the market, and we do expect that they'll all be sold very soon. So if anyone is interested in just having a chat, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to have a chat with you.
And at this stage, we don't have any questions come through. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to place them into the questions panel. Alternatively, you can contact us directly at Mandara Rise, and we can answer any questions you may have about the estate. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we finish up, Luke?
No, I think that's all. Thank you all for joining this evening. It's good to see so many people on the call, and we look forward to catching up with you shortly.
Thank you.